Hey guys, it's Ernesto and welcome back to yet another video. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I'm having a wonderful day. So today I'm gonna walk you through a 4-light setup I did on this photo shoot. So let's get straight into it. Alright, so on this particular photo shoot, I did 3 lighting setups that I'm going to walk you through. So 2 of them were 4 lights, 1 of them was 3 lights. So let's get into the first setup. So in the first setup, what I used was 2 AD200 and then the Godox AD600, which would be this light. And then I also used an Elinchrom D Light 2. Now, to fire that Elinchrom D Light 2, I had it in slave mode, and that was the only way that I could fire it because all the lights that I have are Godox lights. That being said, this is how I had the light position in proximity to the subject. First light, the Godox AD600. That was my main light on the subject. Now, when I started out this photo shoot, or I planned this photo shoot, my original intention was to have 2 lights, which would be the Godox AD600, which would have been on a grid because it would help, the reflector with a grid, it would have helped concentrate the light. And then also utilizing the Godox AD200 without any modifiers or anything, just to use that as a hair light to separate the subject from the background, and also to add a little bit of light spill on the background. So that would also help separate the subject from the background. When the subject finally showed up, that did not work out as planned. The subject was not standing out from the background like I originally intended. So I had to change up the lights. So what I decided to do was, first thing, get rid of the grid and the reflector from the light. I got rid of that because the light was too concentrated. I really didn't like the look of that. So I got rid of that and I put a softbox on the AD600, and that was positioned camera right to the subject. So right about here, because this is where the subject was standing. The next thing I did was I put a strip box on the AD200, which was positioned to my left, which would be camera right. So that was the next thing that I did on that light. Following that, the other thing that I did was added another AD200 position all the way up to the right of the subject, and that light was on a reflector. Now that light, the purpose of that light was to add a little bit of a hair light to the subject, and also to add a little bit of light spill on the wall, on the background. So that was the goal of that light. The goal of the AD200 on here with a grid was to add a little bit more light to highlight the subject's arm and leg and the side of her body. So that was the purpose of that light. Then I decided to add a 4th light, and that 4th light was the Elinchrom D2 light, and that light was positioned directly behind the subject. Now, that light, I didn't put, I had a reflector on that light, and there was no gels on the light at the time. But when I took the test shot, I really hated it. So I decided to add a complementary color, which would complement what the subject was wearing. So I decided to put a blue gel on the background. And when I did that, I really love how all of those lights help to bring the image together. And that is how I basically use all those lights for this particular first scene. So let's get into it. Let's take a look and let me know what you think. Now for this second scene, what I decided to do was use 3 lights for this setup. Now, just like with the first setup, I had the Chrome D2 light in the background with the gel blue. Now, the other light that I had, which would have been the 8600, which was my main light, that had the softbox, I got rid of the softbox because my vision for this particular look was to create like a little bit of a spotlight, like a little bit of a halo above the subject. So I got rid of the softbox and I put back the reflector because I wanted to concentrate the light above the subject, because I wanted to create that halo. So I positioned the light directly above the subject's head, and for that main light, that was my main light. So that was 2 lights so far, the main light above and then the light in the background. Then what I decided to do was bring in that strip box that I had to the subject's left, which was positioned to camera right. I decided to bring that in front of the subject, which would be to the right of the subject and would have been camera left. And the reason I did that was because when I was taking the shots before, it was just too much shadow on the subject, because remember, the main light is coming from directly above and there was just nothing filling in the front of the subject. So that strip box just helped to add and fill in the shadows just a little bit on the subject. And all of those elements come together, help to build this shot that you guys are about to see. All right, so now let's talk about this last scene. So this last scene was the most time consuming to put together, and I had less time to put it together because it was like 10 p.m. at night and the subject, you know, she had to go home. So she was checking the time, asking me what's the time, and you know, I was trying to get this shot to set up. So let me walk you through what I did and how I did it to get these images that you're about to see. So I have this little area in my house that my wife put together, and I thought it would have been a nice little cool area to create an image. But the problem with this area is that because it's 10 p.m. in the night, it's pitch dark outside. So if I position the subject to sit where I wanted her to sit, the background would have been completely pitch black. So I knew the first problem that I needed to solve was put a light directly outside so it can light up the outside, and then toss some light inside by creating some nice shadows. So that was the first thing I did. I put a light directly outside, which would have been the Godox 8200, and I decided to put a CTO gel on that light outside. That was my first problem that I was trying to solve. The next thing that I was trying to solve was I decided then to put the subject where I wanted her to sit, and then I brought in the 8600, which would have been this light, and I had the grid on the light because my hope was the light would have been concentrated a little bit with the grid. So when I took the first shot, the light was spilling. I'm sorry, not with the grid, but the reflector. But the light was spilling when I took the first shot, and it wasn't as concentrated as I originally thought. So what I decided to do was put a grid on this light, which helped to focus the light more on the subject, which was perfect. Now, the other problem that I encountered was shadows. There was way too much shadows in this image, and I'm not talking about the shadows that was being created by the light outside. I'm talking about the shadows on the subject and in the scene. There was just too much of it, and there was not enough detail. So I had to add another light into this image to help bring up those shadows a little bit more and add a little bit more information. So I brought in the Chrome D2 light, and I pointed that light directly at the subject initially with a grid. I'm sorry, not a grid, a reflector. And I pointed that directly at the subject, and it was washing out the scene. It was not adding anything to the image. but I knew I wanted a light to fill in those shadows. So I decided to add a blue gel on the light in hopes to basically cut down the light a little bit. And that did not do anything. All it did was just blast a whole bunch of blue light into the scene, which is not what I was looking for. I was just looking for a little bit of light, and that light was at the lowest power as it can go. And remember, it's on a slave mode, so there's really nothing else that I could do with it. So all I decided to do here was just turn the light away from the subject, and I turned the light into the room so that it could hit the wall and bounce back onto the subject, and just create that nice little light fall off and fill in the shadows just a little bit, which was perfect. That's exactly what it did, and that's exactly what I wanted. So that light solved that initial problem, which was the shadows. Now, the last problem that I had to solve was from a compositional perspective. So I had a great composition that I wanted to take, at least what I thought was a great composition. But the problem with the composition was the door. There was a door to my camera right that was dark. Because remember, I said it was dark outside. So there was nothing there. It was just very distracting. It's just, you know, if you look at it too long enough, you're not going to be looking at the subject. So I decided to add an AD 200 light outside. That light didn't have any reflectors on it, but what I did add to that light was a gel. I initially put a green gel, and that green gel was totally distracting. So I immediately killed that green gel, and I decided to put a turquoise gel on that light, which was a little bit more complementary to the scene. And I really, really loved that. So after I added all those lights, those 4 lights, that helped to create the image that you're about to see. And that, you know, really, really for me, brought it all together, and I really enjoy this image. So let's get into it. Alright guys, so that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and put some comments down below. Let me know which one was your favorite image. And if you guys really enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give it a big thumbs up. Share this video with your friends and family if you enjoyed this video. And guys, if you got this far in this video and you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, what are you waiting for? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.